The humidity in the air of Silver Oaks, Connecticut, was thick enough to choke on, but it wasn't the weather, it was the concentrated arrogance of 500 people dressed in linen and pearls. I sat at a corner table, tucked away near the kitchen entrance of the community clubhouse. I wore a faded $15 t-shirt and cargo shorts, my hair pulled back in a messy bun. To everyone here, I was the disgrace of the Miller family, the ex-daughter-in-law who had supposedly lost her mind and was now living like a vagabond in a customized Sprinter van parked on the outskirts of town. My former mother-in-law, Beatrice Miller, approached me with the grace of a predatory shark. She was the self-appointed queen of the Silver Oaks HOA, dripping in Cartier diamonds that probably cost more than the van she claimed I shacked up in. Behind her stood my ex-husband, Julian, looking smug in his tailored Ralph Lauren suit. He held a legal folder like a weapon. "Look at you, Elena," Beatrice sneered, her voice loud enough to draw the attention of the nearby donors. "You smell of cheap soap and gasoline. To think you were once part of this family. We are here today to raise funds for the Children's Future Foundation, yet you show up looking like a homeless squatter." Julian stepped forward, slamming the folder onto my table. A glass of expensive Chardonnay rattled but didn't spill. "It's over, Elena. I've filed for a full custody emergency hearing. My lawyer is already presenting the photos of your residence to the judge. No court in this state will allow my children to spend another night in a metal box on wheels while I live in a $20 million estate." I didn't flinch. I didn't raise my voice. I simply picked up my water glass and took a slow, deliberate sip. The cool liquid was a sharp contrast to the heat of their malice. I looked at Julian, then at Beatrice. Their faces were twisted with a mixture of pity and disgust, the kind of look wealthy people give to a stain on a rug they intend to throw away. "The van is my choice, Julian," I said calmly. "It's called freedom, something you wouldn't understand while you're drowning in the debt of maintaining appearances." Beatrice laughed, a sharp metallic sound. "Freedom? You're a blight on this community. As the president of the HOA, I've already authorized a permanent ban on your vehicle within Silver Oaks limits. And since you have no fixed address of acceptable standard, you are officially being barred from the Miller Family Trust. You leave here tonight with nothing, not the kids, not a cent, and certainly not your dignity." She turned to the crowd, raising her glass. "A toast to purging the trash from our beautiful Silver Oaks." The room erupted in polite laughter. I checked my watch. 7:45 p.m. In exactly 15 minutes, the automated financial reports for the Silver Oaks Development Holding would be sent to every board member's iPad. They thought they were the masters of this domain. They didn't realize that the metal box they despised contained the encrypted keys to the very land they were standing on. Beatrice didn't stop at the toast. She signaled the waitstaff to bring more champagne, turning the charity gala into a public execution of my character. She paraded around the room with Julian's new fiancée, Tiffany, a 24-year-old Instagram model whose entire personality was curated by a social media team. Tiffany was wearing a vintage Versace gown, her arm draped over Julian's as if she had already won the lottery. "Everyone, I have an announcement." Beatrice's voice boomed through the Bose surround system. "In light of the unfortunate circumstances surrounding my former daughter-in-law, the Miller family has decided to double our donation tonight. We are contributing $5 million to the expansion of the Silver Oaks Country Club. We believe in preserving the purity and standard of our neighborhood." The crowd cheered. The elite of Connecticut clinked glasses, casting side eyes at my corner table. Julian walked back to me, leaning down so only I could hear him. "You see this, Elena? This is power. This is influence. My mother is the soul of this community. In 10 minutes, the HOA board will vote to seize your remaining assets in the family trust as reparations for the reputational damage you've caused. You'll be lucky if you can afford gas for that rust bucket you live in." I looked at my phone. 7:52 p.m. "Julian, you should check your accounts before you make promises you can't keep. High-maintenance lifestyles require high-liquidity assets. Do you even know where your mother's donation is coming from?" He scoffed, adjusted his silk tie, and smirked. "It's coming from the Miller revenue stream, which, as you know, is backed by the Silver Oaks Development Holding. The very holding that owns this clubhouse, the golf course, and every inch of asphalt you're illegally parked on. Interesting, I replied, my voice as flat as a dial tone. And who do you think manages the holding's debt-to-equity ratio? Who do you think authorized the bridge loan last quarter, when the Miller construction project in Dubai went south? Julian froze for a split second, then his face turned a deep shade of crimson. You're bluffing. You've been living in a van eating canned beans for 18 months. You're just a bitter ex-wife trying to sound relevant. Tiffany stepped up, clutching her designer clutch. Honey, don't talk to it. It's pathetic. Elena, I've already picked out the new wallpaper for your kids' bedrooms. We're turning your old office into a walk-in closet for my shoes. Since you're so fond of freedom, you won't mind being free from all your responsibilities, right? I smiled then. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of an architect watching a faulty building finally start to crack. I hope you like the color red, Tiffany. It's going to be the dominant theme in your financial portfolio tonight. I stood up, slinging my cheap backpack over my shoulder. I didn't look back as I walked toward the exit. I could hear Beatrice behind me, loudly complaining about the lingering smell of poverty I was leaving behind. Little did she know, I wasn't leaving. I was just going to my van to grab the master remote. I stepped out into the cool night air and walked toward my Sprinter van, which was parked defiantly in the VIP-only zone. Inside, the interior was a masterpiece of minimalist technology. 3 32-inch 4K monitors glowed with real-time global market data and encrypted banking portals. I didn't live in this van because I was poor. I lived in it because it was a mobile, untraceable fortress. 8 p.m. The clock on my dashboard flipped. I hit a single key on my mechanical keyboard. A command titled Project Foreclosure was executed. Simultaneously, an automated email blast went out to every member of the Silver Oaks HOA board, the local press, and Julian's personal inbox. Inside the clubhouse, the music suddenly stopped. I could hear the muffled confusion through the open windows. I walked back toward the entrance, not as a guest but as the landlord. As I entered, the atmosphere had shifted from celebratory to chaotic. Dozens of iPads and iPhones were chiming in unison, the sound of 100 financial notifications hitting at once. Beatrice was standing at the podium, her face pale, staring at her tablet as if it were a poisonous snake. What is the meaning of this? She stammered into the microphone, her voice trembling. The Silver Oaks Development Holding has just filed for emergency Chapter 11 protection? That's impossible. We are the owners. Julian rushed toward his mother, his phone pressed to his ear. Mom, the bank just froze the Miller revenue stream. They're saying our bridge loan for the Dubai project was called in early by the primary debt holder, but we had 6 more months. I walked into the center of the ballroom. The crowd parted like the Red Sea. I wasn't the homeless squatter anymore. I was the only person in the room who wasn't panicking. It wasn't called in early, Julian, I said, my voice cutting through the noise like a diamond through glass. The debt was sold. 48 hours ago, a private equity firm called Aegis Sovereignty purchased 100% of the Miller family's liabilities. And as of 8 p.m. tonight, Aegis has declared a technical default due to your mother's unauthorized use of corporate funds for, what did she call it? A $5 million donation to a country club? Beatrice looked at me, her eyes wide with terror. How do you know about Aegis? That's a multi-billion-dollar shadow fund based in Singapore. I know about it because I founded it, I replied calmly. I used my divorce settlement, the one you tried so hard to minimize, to short your family's over-leveraged stocks. I've spent the last 18 months living in that metal box to keep my overhead low and my focus sharp. While you were buying diamonds and Instagram likes, I was buying your debt. The silence that followed was deafening. Tiffany's wine glass slipped from her hand, shattering on the marble floor. The vintage Versace gown was now stained with dark red wine, the very color I had promised her. The HOA board members, men who had sneered at my cargo shorts minutes ago, were now looking at their tablets in horror. One of them, Mr. Sterling, stood up. Elena, it says here that Aegis Sovereignty didn't just buy the Miller debt. It says Aegis now owns the underlying land title for the entire Silver Oaks subdivision, including this clubhouse. Is that true? I looked him dead in the eye. Every square inch, Mr. Sterling. And as the new owner, I have some very specific thoughts on the purity and standards of this community. Beatrice tried to lunge forward, her face a mask of Botox and fury, but two security guards, men she had hired to keep trash like me out, stepped in her path. They didn't look at her. They looked at me, awaiting instructions. They knew who signed their paychecks as of 6 o'clock this morning. This is a lie. A digital hoax. Beatrice screamed, her voice cracking. Julian, call the police. She's hacking the system. She's a van-dwelling psychotic. Julian's hands were shaking so violently he dropped his phone. Mom? I can't. I just got a notification from the bank. My personal credit lines. They're all gone. The collateral was the Miller revenue stream. It's all tied together. I walked to the podium and calmly displaced Beatrice. I pulled a slim, carbon fiber laptop from my backpack and plugged it into the ballroom's massive LED screen. The Children's Future Foundation logo was instantly replaced by a stark, cold spreadsheet. Let's look at the real purity of Silver Oaks, I said, my voice amplified by the speakers. This is the audit trail of the Miller Development Holding. Over the last 18 months, Beatrice Miller has embezzled $14 million from the HOA Reserve Fund to pay for her charity galas and Tiffany's shopping trips in Milan. Julian, you signed off on these as the CFO. That's not just a debt, that's a federal crime. A collective gasp rippled through the room. The HOA board members looked like they were about to have heart attacks. And here, I tapped a key, bringing up a high-resolution scan of a land deed, is the title to the Miller estate. You thought you owned that $20 million mansion. Wrong. You sold the land rights to a shell company in 2024 to cover your Dubai losses. That shell company was a subsidiary of Aegis. You've been paying rent to me for over a year without even knowing it. I turned to Tiffany, who was clutching her stained Versace dress as if it could protect her. That engagement ring on your finger? The insurance was canceled 3 hours ago because the premiums were paid with a corporate card that no longer exists. Technically, if you leave this building with it, you're transporting stolen property. Tiffany's jaw dropped. She looked at Julian, then at the ring, then back at me. The predatory glint in her eyes had been replaced by the hollow stare of someone who realized they had hitched their wagon to a falling star. I'm not here to argue, Beatrice, I said, looking at my former mother-in-law. I'm here to inform. As of 8:15 p.m., the Silver Oaks HOA has been dissolved by the majority shareholder me. This clubhouse is being closed for renovation effective immediately. And as for your home, the eviction notice was served to your butler 10 minutes ago. Beatrice slumped against the mahogany table, the diamonds on her neck suddenly looking like heavy, worthless stones. The queen had been stripped of her crown in front of the very subjects she spent her life trying to impress. You can't do this, Julian whispered, his eyes red. We're family. We gave you everything. You gave me a divorce and a lesson in how people treat those they think are beneath them, I replied. I just turned that lesson into a business model. The grandeur of the Silver Oaks clubhouse felt like a tomb. Beatrice reached out, her manicured hand trembling as she tried to grab my sleeve. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a desperate, ugly pleading. Elena, please. We are your children's family. You can't put their grandmother on the street. Think of the scandal. We can work this out. We'll give you whatever you want. I looked down at her hand until she slowly pulled it away. The scandal was created by your embezzlement, Beatrice, not my foreclosure. And as for my children, they will learn a valuable lesson today, that a home is built on character, not stolen HOA funds. They'll be staying with me in a beautiful property I own in Vermont, a place you'll never find. Julian stepped forward, his eyes darting around the room at the judgmental faces of his peers. Elena, stop. I'll sign the custody papers. I'll go away. Just give us 30 days to move our things. Don't do this in front of everyone. You had 18 months to treat me with an ounce of human decency, Julian, I said, my voice echoing in the sudden silence of the hall. Instead, you spent that time trying to prove I was trash so you could feel superior. You didn't love me when I was your wife, and you certainly don't love me now. You love the liquidity I represent. But that tap has been turned off permanently. I turned to the room at large. The bar is closed. The valet has been instructed to return keys only to those whose vehicles are not currently being used as collateral for Miller development loans. To the rest of you, I suggest you call an Uber. Silver Oaks is under new management. And my first act of business is an exhaustive forensic audit of every donor present tonight. Panic flared in the eyes of the elite. They scrambled for the exits, no longer laughing, no longer clinking glasses. Tiffany was already halfway to the door, her phone out, likely calling an ex-boyfriend or a new mark. She didn't even look back at Julian. I walked out of the clubhouse for the last time. The air outside felt cleaner, stripped of the heavy perfume of hypocrisy. My Sprinter van sat idling, its headlights cutting through the Connecticut mist. To the world it was just a van. To me, it was the cockpit of a global empire that no one saw coming. As I pulled out of the driveway, I saw Beatrice and Julian standing on the curb, surrounded by their designer luggage that the movers had already deposited on the sidewalk. They looked small. They looked ordinary. I adjusted my mirrors, checked my bank balance, which had increased by another $3 million during the gala due to a short position on Miller-linked stocks, and headed toward the highway. I had a long drive ahead of me, and for the first time in years, the road was completely clear. I wasn't just free. I was the one who owned the road.